Welcome to the Compassion Show, where we explore what happens when business leaders swap their fear for empathy and their control for connection. And today's guest is someone who knows the world of high pressure, high performance, and what happens when it all breaks down. And Steve Ware has spent 30 years in corporate life, mainly, in fact, all his career working for IBM. But now he's doing something very different, very different. He's a mindfulness coach, helping you to stop, breathe, and make much wiser choices, not by escaping business, but by transforming how we show up. So Steve, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here,
Right,
Nigel.
you did this on me, so we'll turn the tables. You asked me three very quick fire questions. I'm going to do the same, a bit different. So, first question I have for you, Steve, is that you spent 30 years at IBM, and be honest with me, when you first heard the word mindfulness, many, many years ago, what was your immediate reaction to it?
Am I
Yes,
allowed
of
to swear
course.
on here? So bollocks, bullshit, probably one of
Right.
those two. Yeah, it wasn't for me. I was a macho-ish guy in a macho-ish world, and I did. So here's the interesting. I mean, you touched on something really interesting really early on. I didn't know what mindfulness was, but I had an opinion of it, right? And I had strong opinions of it, and probably my strongest opinion of it, and we can dig really deeply into it if you want at some point in this podcast. But at the surface level, I just rejected it. I rejected it as BS. I rejected it as nonsense. I rejected it as nothing. But even within that, it's more complicated than that, Nigel. Because on one hand, my mind said to me, "This won't do anything. It's for weirdos. It's for tree huggers. It's for navel gazers that haven't got any real job to do and haven't got an inbox that needs finishing or clients that need serving." Right. But I also had the other extreme of my same mind, which was telling me, "Hey, Steve, you get too good at this and you'll check out. You'll check out of life. You'll be that passive blob sitting in a corner that, they say, don't give any work to this guy anymore because he doesn't do it. He's too busy meditating and being in the moment, whatever that means." So that was an interesting observation just straight away. So my mind's telling me, don't do it because it's too powerful. Don't do it because it's too weak. Which do you believe?
Right, we'll dig into that one a bit later. Sure. Right, next question. Now you've kind of moved on. You're an incredible mindfulness coach. If you could put a mindfulness bell in any one workplace place or interrupt bad habits, where would you put that bell?
God, I would probably lean towards male environments. I have a real thing. I mean, I love teaching everybody, and I've taught all age groups and all sexes and all professions pretty much. But I've got maybe a particularly soft spot and an appreciation for men who are very cynical and very skeptical of this. And we're back to when they hear the word mindfulness, they think a load of bollocks. And I encourage that, and I want people to be honest about that, because if we're ever going to get anywhere with this thing you call mindfulness, right, and hopefully we'll dig into exactly what that is, because it's a funny word, and that's the translation that's stuck, but I don't like it as a word. If we're going to get anywhere with this, it's got to be meaningful, it's got to be powerful, it's got to be secular, it's got to be mainstream, it's got to fit into your day, it's got to be everything everybody wants right here, right now. Otherwise, we're simply not going to do it. And if it's going to save people's lives, and I don't use that expression lightly, if it's going to save men's lives, we need to get past the stigma. We need to get past the connotations. We need to talk about it openly and honestly in a language they understand. So one of my missions is to really speak to men in a language they get and in a tone they understand, and make them realize what this thing is. And guess what? They're probably already practicing it to a greater or lesser extent. And it's probably some of the greatest moments of their life, right?
Actually, we were just talking, my friend just talked about it the other day. We were just talking about the 10 traits, the book I just called the 10 traits of a passionate leader. I'm just saying, you know what? This really is for men over a certain age. That's who this book is really for. And she took me back a bit But you're right. There's men who are 40. This is who I'm naming this book. I think, like you, the kind of this thing
Yeah.
about where this moment of inflection in our own personal journey of life, we get to a certain point and we go, things have got to be better. There must be a better way to do something, to do any of this. So I think that's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I did that. And before we get into it, one last question. Well, quick fire question so people get to understand you a bit more. This one will be quite difficult. So you have untold wealth, global recognition.
I'm not sure I want either, but I'd probably take global recognition.
Right.
My financial advisor said to me the other week, he said, "What would you do if I gave you 20 million quid?" And I said to him, "I'll probably give you most of it back," because one of the things that drives me far more than money, of course, that's a driver, that's a significant driver, but something bigger than that is this passion I have for this. I've got a certain amount that I want to give here, and I'm not spent yet. And if somebody gave me an inordinate amount of money, that might take a little bit of my drive away, because if I literally didn't have to ever do any work again, Nigel, that would be one thing that drives me missing. So I'm glad I have that. When I lost my job at IBM, I'm sure we'll get into this, they gave me a really bad payout. They gave me £12,000 for 28 years, like you said at the start, 28 years service. So it was a bad redundancy payout, but I was truly grateful for it in time, because it lit a fire under me and it said, hey, if you're going to go and do this mindfulness thing, you better do it now, and you better get your act together, because you haven't got much money.
I would say that IBM, that wasn't a payout, that was a disgrace. 28 years, little money, that's just horrendous. No wonder you don't hear those speeches anymore, IBM. But anyway, after that from there, giving them a bit more. Okay, let's go back there a little bit. She spent almost 30 years working in a very high pressure environment at IBM, and you said you had this kind of, which I would call a very disrespectful payout. But what was the moment that made you realize that you had to change? And was it a specific breaking point, or was it more, because we talked about this thing at the very beginning, what was your first reaction to mindfulness? You've got a different opinion of what that word means today. We can certainly explore that. Or was it more a slow awakening? Was it right, IBM and shit's me out, I've got to do something. I'll do this because I think it's in vogue. Or were you on a journey?
I was definitely on a journey, and looking back, my journey started in my early 20s, actually. So I got ill. I actually missed sitting my finals at university. So to go back before that, I joined IBM when I was 18. I was picked as one of maybe 17, 18 people from around the country, and they ran a course at the headquarters down in Portsmouth here. It was twinned with the university. And they took 18, what they thought would be, I guess, good people for the company. And we did a 4-year course in 3 years. We were sponsored by IBM, so we didn't do our gap year, and it was quite intense. And we had kind of compressed lectures at university, and then when we weren't at university, we were in the office. And so it was hard work right from the start, right from 18. I understood what the world of work was like, and to do a proper job while still at university. And when I got to 21, I had bad, what's they call it? I think the official name for it is infectious mononucleosis, but I can't think of what the normal word for it is. It'll come back to me. I get this illness, and it wipes me out, completely wiped me out, kind of mentally and physically. So I go to the doctors and I said, my brain's scattered. I'm not sure I can do this studying thing. And he said, there's no way you can be able to sit your finals, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up not sitting my finals. They averaged out my grades, and it was all great in the end. But after that, I remember going away. I remember my doctor saying to me, "You got to take it really easy now." He said, "Your body's been quite battered by this." He said, "You're going to pick up every cold, and you really need to look after yourself." And I was, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I thought, what the hell does he know? I'm invincible. So I get offered this 5-week intense course out in Belgium to go and completely retrain with IBM. And I went out there, and I was basically probably the only guy on this course that had pretty much never heard of what we were doing. So I was way behind the curriculum and all this. I was working ridiculous hours to try and keep up. I was working late into the evenings. I was working weekends. And I got more and more tired and more exhausted. And this kind of illness that I'd had kind of ended up catching up with me again. And I ended up having to come home from that. And it hit me really hard. For the first time in my life, Nigel, I went from being this golden boy who, got the first at university, was a dancer as a kid and was in stage school in London and got flown to Japan for professional work when he was 11 and won every tournament he entered, and, was half decent sportsman. Yeah, half decent sportsman, all this kind of stuff. So my first taste of failure wasn't until 21. And it hit me quite hard. I came back from that very low, exhausted, sort of emotionally and physically. And I went to the doctor and I said, I'm just really anxious all the time. And he said, take these anti-anxiety, these antidepressants. And I thought I wanted some kind of more than that. So I looked into therapy. I looked into talking therapy. So in my early 20s, I had some analytical psychotherapy with a lady that was really helpful. If I fast forward another 10, 15 years, there was still something that wasn't right in me. And somebody like Eckhart Tolle, if anybody's heard of him, he's written a great book called The Power of Now and other things, right? He would describe, we're going quite deep, quite fast here, but he would describe all the pain. How can I put this so people can relate? All the pain you don't acknowledge. Maybe your pet dog died when you were young and you just kind of buried the emotion, or your grandparents died, you didn't deal with it, or you lost a parent and you didn't deal with it, or something big happened and maybe whether you're male or female, you kind of pushed it down and you suppressed it and you resisted it and you tried to put stiff upper lip, right? All that stuff that gets buried, it doesn't disappear. It goes back and it comes back another day, right? And often it comes back stronger another day. And Eckhart Tolle would describe that as pain body. That's pain that hasn't been allowed to transmute and shift and kind of work its way through. It's kind of trapped energy, if you want to use that word, energy. So I felt like I had this. There was this sense of unease. There was this sense of anxiety. My sleep got gradually worse and worse. Work felt way more pressure than it should have done. It was disproportionately pressure to really the amount of pressure I was under. And I thought, I didn't know where to turn, honestly. I thought, what am I going to do here? I was looking after myself physically. I was going to the gym. I was eating quite well. I wasn't drinking really. I've never smoked. And I thought, I don't know. I think I need to look after my mental health, but I don't really know how to. No one showed me. Doesn't that just follow if you look after yourself physically and try and get enough sleep? And it was almost pretty much chance conversation with a family member. And she said her brother is a really great acupuncturist in London, working with some amazing people. And he was working with a guy called Andy Puddicombe at the time, who's the guy behind Headspace. So this is probably between 10 and 15 years ago. And she said to me, have you ever thought about meditation? She said, I've just been on a course with Andy. He's brilliant. He's amazing. He's this English guy who had a load of trauma in his life. Removed himself, went off to a monastery, became a monk, learned this skill of balance, of resilience, and is now bringing it back to the West. And he's opened this app called Headspace, and he's teaching it with her brother in London. And I thought, well, it sounds like bollocks, and it sounds like. But there was just 1% of me that was curious. There was 1% of me that thought, maybe you should get out of your own way and try it. Maybe you don't know everything, Steve. It's been around 2,500 years and all this kind of. And so I didn't tell anybody. I was so embarrassed. This tough guy, this guy that succeeded at everything, that doesn't really ask anybody for anything, but people come to him for stuff. That was the kind of role I played growing up. So for me to, in quotes, admit that I needed help, with my sleep, with my fear, with my mental health was too much to tell anybody. So I didn't tell anybody, but this is where it gets interesting, right? So I download this app called Headspace and I try it for 10 days. And then a couple months later, people at work, at the office said, what are you doing differently?
Oh, wow.
And they started to notice a change. Yeah, they noticed a change in me. So I had no desire to teach mindfulness, stress reduction, however you want to package it. I was purely focusing on myself. What can I do to sleep better, to feel less anxious? But when other people kind of said to me, we're seeing a change in you, what are you doing? And when I told them, they said, please, can you teach us? We're as stressed as you are. We get as little sleep as you do. it kind of planted a seed, and I thought, you know what, I said to them, I can't teach at the moment. I'm just learning this stuff myself. I don't know what I'm doing myself. But it led, long story short, it led me to opening the laptop one day and saying, where would be the best place to learn how to teach mindfulness in business, in a tough business, in a place like IBM, like I said earlier, that won't want this, that hasn't got time for this, that would see it as soft, that would see it as irrelevant. All these. Now, is there a program that exists in the UK that I could go and train in, that they reckon I could bring back into IBM, teach my colleagues, and it would be a roaring success? And what came up was University of Oxford. And I went there and I basically said that to them. There were some incredible teachers there, still are, amazing place. And I said, guys, this is the challenge, right? I know you've done this academically and clinically to an extremely high standard. This is already their offerings, something called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, was already approved by the NHS by then. This is the debate as to whether or not it was a great clinical intervention had long since passed, as effective or more effective than antidepressants with many people. So it's proven clinically, it was very good, proven academically, but they hadn't really done much in the workplace. So me teaching it for IBM was one of the first real tests for this program, real world tests. So I brought the program back into IBM. It was an incredible success, and I don't take much personal credit for that, but it was such a phenomenal success, Nigel, that we partnered with Oxford University. It became the first corporate approved mindfulness program. I had a wait list of over 500 people, even though I was doing this in my own time. And the hairs on the back of my neck standing up as I tell you, because I got the first 3 bits of feedback I got, which really made me think, mindfulness has found me, I haven't found it. The 3 bits of feedback I got, one guy said, I've had pre-hypertension for decades and my blood pressures have turned to normal for the first time in 10 years. And my doctor's confounded by this, was the word he used, confounded. Wow. He said, I'm drinking less, I'm listening to my wife more, I'm a better dad, I'm a better, credible results. There's one other lady who's quite high up in HR who said this has been life-changing for me and my family. And there was another manager who said that she'd come back from long-term sick ahead of time as a direct result of the course. And I remember sitting in these in my office, reading these in IBM, looking at the laptop thinking, wow, like what set out to just me helping my colleagues. And yeah, I wanted to learn it. And of course I wanted to go deeper with everything. But what started off as a kind of a little experiment in helping them, this has got legs. This is huge. Like this is transforming well-being. This is people who, and if she's listening to this, she won't mind me saying this. The lady who said this has been life-changing for me and my family, she'd been in IBM 30 years. She'd done a hell of a lot of personal development. She wasn't somebody who signed up to a course and blew smoke up people and said this is amazing and brilliant if it wasn't. So when she started saying stuff like that, and when she joined her leadership course, started saying, do you know what? I went on this course with Steve. It's totally changed my life. And it's changed my relationship with my daughter. And I'm a nicer mum. And people really started to sit up and listen then. But to answer your question, so by the time I lost my job in IBM in 2020, I'd already been teaching this in IBM. I'd already created a mindfulness community started with 3 of us and grew to 15,000+. And we'd been changing quite a lot of lives. So by the time I got to 2020, the only real decision was, do I go for the, in quotes, safe job and follow my head and go work for Microsoft or Salesforce or whoever else? Or do I follow my heart and take the scarier option of setting up a business? I don't know how to set up a business. I don't know how to find clients. I don't know how to market. I don't know how to sell. I was a techie at IBM. But the pull was so strong that I literally sat with it, Nigel. I sat and I was still and I watched my body. And for anybody watching or listening to this, if you've got a decision to make, if you can genuinely tune into your body, and it's not the easiest thing to do, but if you can learn to do that, your body, and people call it intuition, gut feeling, whatever, and we know we've got brain cells in our gut, right? If you can tune into your body won't lie to you. And I remember sitting in that moment and my mind said safety, pension, think healthcare, think regular salary, think job, think big name job, blah, blah, blah. That's all you've ever known, Steve. And my stomach said, please don't. That makes me feel sick. It makes me feel genuinely nauseous. And when I thought about helping people and creating this course and taking it to other businesses and working one-to-one with people, I got this huge rush of excited fear, I would describe it as.
Well, thank God you listened to your heart. And, to me, when I was difficult decision to make now, I didn't need to do this because I always listened to that one voice. The only voice here was that of my ego going, safety, and go for it, can you? And destroy everything in your path. It's like, and then I never gave this other voice, whatever you want to call it, this other tiny, peaceful voice the chance to do it. Like you, I'd said, just give it a chance and let's see what difference it is. And you had this kind of ego darkness really over this small light. And then when you allow the light to speak, it's amazing how peaceful you become. And everything I noticed is just recently. Actually, I'll share something that I haven't really shared a lot of people. I used to eat very quickly. Get back, and then I eat slowly, gently. Himself and meeting with mindfully. And then I'm a calmer, more peaceful person. And everything that I do, all my things that I do, are just done with a bit more serenity. And I recognize that, and I recognize how I used to be, which was shit, to be honest. And it's people like you that are making a real difference in the world. And you said earlier, we spoke to the University of Oxford, I can't take credit for this stuff, that you should take enormous credit. But just taking that moment to open your laptop in the first place, that was a huge shift. Just doing that, opening and looking at the screen, like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
How do I get this thing done? I mean, huge congratulations to you. And it's absolutely impressive. And I mean it with absolute sincerity. We met recently a month ago, and I was blown away by your first talk when I first met you. And the thing I picked up, which goes to my second question, we talk about mindfulness or stress reduction. I mean, you call it stress reduction. I don't want to describe it. The world of corporate, the workplace is absolutely shattered and broken and destroyed. And I talk about the data a lot, and I'm sure you know the data too. But the one data that I always picked out, which I kind of reference a lot, and I'm doing a bit of a piece of collaboration with someone from Oxford University at the moment, actually. Materials psychologists, odd enough. But the data I'm trying to fix and trying to raise into leaders' minds is to understand the root cause of this one data set, which is, 1 in 4 employees are now reporting they're sad or angry every single day. And they go, yeah, that's okay. So no, you missed the most important bit every single day. So if you employ, 100 people, you've got 40 of them or 30 of them, a huge amount of people coming into work or angry. Now, there's a huge amount of stress that causes that, or whatever the vector point is that makes them so angry. We need people who come in and have that. The world of business needs people who come in and have the tools like you to get the root cause of it. Because most people think mindfulness, that's quite, we talked about earlier, that's quite soft. We don't better switch off. I'm going to go into a restful place, all that kind of stuff. But you don't teach it. You teach it as a way to actually switch on to what matters. So how do you, we talked about, you mentioned it earlier when IBM were quite skeptical, and most people I talk to are skeptical, or Nigel, this compassionate, it's all a bunch of crap, it's not going to work in my business. I say, hold a second, if I demonstrate 60% improving your EBIT, we then pay attention. Yes, I will, but that's not compassion. I don't know. But how do you explain the shift to the skeptical business leaders? How do you get this into their mind?
I mean, I really would lead with outcomes, and it depend who I'm speaking to. So if I'm speaking to the head of HR, what do they want to hear from me? They don't want to hear particularly that I'm going to come in and everybody's going to have a nice time and their stress is going to come down. Okay, great. But if we've been brutally honest about this, and I won't name any names, there are plenty of companies who, if people are performing, and what I mean by performing, meeting their numbers, meeting their targets, they don't really care how they're doing at home. Are they sleeping well? Are they angry half the time? Who cares? She's meeting the numbers, so we don't particularly care. They can sort that out themselves if they want to. We've really got.
I was that person. I did that.
There you go then.
And I thought, great.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Well, let me. I was just going to say one question I thought of, and we'll come back. I will come back and answer your question. But one thing I thought of is, and I don't want to hijack your podcast, but if I was talking to old Nigel, right? Nigel, the bit of a shit, I think you described yourself as earlier, who just wants numbers and who's sending emails at 3:00 in the morning, and I'm gonna bulldoze through everything else and blah blah blah. Is what is there any outcome that I could have said to him if I'm talking to him now and I say, hey, Nigel of 10, 20 years ago, however long it was, I've got this great stress reduction program, right? And you go, okay, well, tell me about it. And I say, well, Nigel, it's going to help people sleep better, right? And here's the percentage of people that have a bad night's sleep. And here's what happens when we do have a bad night's sleep and the impact on performance. And people that come out of my course, they make less mistakes and they go off sick less. And their creation and innovation is much higher than it was. And they're better, more collaborative employees. And if they're leading, they lead with more compassion and empathy, and they're more trusted by people. If I came into Nigel's old boardroom and I started saying those outcomes, does he then go, okay, maybe I'll give it a try? Or does he still say, no, I've heard the word mindfulness and it must be just a load of BS?
I would have said 20 years ago, Steve, I've read Tony Robbins' Unlimited Power, Awaken the Giant Within. Don't come to me with that crap, because I am going to be successful. I don't need sleep. I've got my 3 hours, 4 hours a night. I've got my hour of power and all that crap. I'm that's it. Do I recognize I'm burning? Do I recognize I'm burning out? No, because people like him talk like this. All the other people around him. And I went to one of his shows. I don't mind calling him out personally. It was, I'm not. I'm just saying that whole message about you've got to create a plan that's personal to you, just for you, of massive needs-based, unnecessary things, all the ego things that we need in our life, and go and get them. How hard you have to work hard, and that's what I took from going to loads of those kind of courses, and I didn't know that it was a pathway to burnout. So at that point, I would have said, now I'm going to thank you, but I'm on a different journey. I don't think mindfulness and stress reduction equals profitability, personal and corporately. So thank you, but no thank you. Today, sitting here with someone who's got incurable cancer, I think a lot of it is due to that kind of not paying attention to myself, completely working 18 hours a day, smoking, drinking, eating terribly, not taking any time to listen to myself and to who I really am. And today would have said, oh, please come in, because I just, I can see the profitability of health and corporate life to this stress reduction and anxiety management. And those are two parallels I see today. And those parallels are not mythical, they're real.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. So that was a genuine, honest answer based on real life experience.
I appreciate it. And therein lies our challenge, right? Therein lies my challenge. I've got a combination of senior leaders who will be the old you, who will say, well, I see it and I see all your results and I see your ROI of 600+%, and I see people coming back from long-term sick and I see this and that. But there's still that thing at the back of their mind that says no. Plus, the other thing you can add in with a lot of senior people is they don't feel the stress like the people underneath them. To get to, when I work one-to-one with people, what they don't ask for is, they don't really ask for stress reduction because they can handle stress. They wouldn't have got to where they were if they couldn't handle stress. They don't ask for resilience because they would, likewise, right? They've got to be incredibly resilient to get there where they are. So they're not really looking for those two things. The people at the highest levels in business that I work with, they want unshakable focus in the boardroom. They want to be able to give 100% of their attention to this moment, even though they've got 1,000 things dragging them. And I know they've got to go into another board meeting room in a second, but this is a multi-million-pound decision. I've got to be present with this. They want to be able to switch off when they go home because they get so little precious time with their wife, kids, whatever their domestic situation is, that they want to make the most of that, and they find it hard to switch off. So depending on who you're speaking to, it is different outcomes. And I've learned over the years to speak to different people differently, right? Because if I barrel through a CEO's office and say the wrong thing, then they kick me out before they've even seen anything. So it's a difficult It's not difficult, but I need to be mindful, if we're going to use that phrase, of who I'm speaking to whom I'm speaking, and what do they want from this? What do they want from this? And if we go down the path of, I'm a beautiful, compassionate leader, and I want you to come in and help me with that, great. And if it's I'm a leader who wants an ROI of 600% from a stress reduction program, can you offer that? Great, yeah. Guess what? It's the same program.
Exactly. Just as you were speaking, I was thinking, you talked about it, the guy in the boardroom, I've been just focused on that one decision. Although actually what I'm doing in the boardroom is being a politician, not really being a leader. I'm just trying to cope with all the other people trying to, vie for a bit of a CEO attention, because mainly all about, and people don't really care about culture. But then we, I've got that level of stress. But when I've done my journey up to that position in the boardroom, I still got stressed, but just a different type of stress. But are there different levels really, or is there just stress? And I'm just able to cope with different forms of it, but it's always stress no matter what I do.
Good question, isn't it? I mean, how would you describe stress? I would probably describe stress on the most basic level. If we boiled it all down, relevant whether you work, whether you don't, if you're a senior leader or not, stress is probably life not going how you wanted it or hoped it to.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're a multi-billionaire and suddenly you have a heart problem or you have another health problem, or whether you live in a tent and you've got nothing and you desire a mansion. Well, both those situations are life isn't treating me fairly, or life isn't how I wanted it to be. Non-acceptance of the present moment. Everything's going to lead back to this, right? So stress to me in its most fundamental form is life isn't happening how we normally say, probably how it should, right? Because we all think, oh, by the age of 20, I'll do this. And then by the age of 30, I'll have this. And then by the age of 40, I'll do that. And then I'll retire at this. And then da. And then when life doesn't give us that, when we get the curveballs, when we get the suffering, then we go, oh, well, that wasn't going to happen, was it? I didn't sign up for that. I signed up for an easy life, or I signed up for all the good things. And so that's probably then the stress. And if you look at the most stress-free people on this planet, if you look at the Eckhart Tolles, if you look at the enlightened beings, there are very few of them, but if you look at them, what's the one thing that unites them all? They live purely in this moment, but bigger than that, they surrender to what is. They accept the content of this present moment. And I've got to be very careful, and I want to give a little bit more explanation to that, right? Because what surrendering or accepting this moment doesn't mean is that you necessarily like it or don't want to change it or don't take action to change it, right? Surrendering to what is doesn't mean I meet someone in the street after this podcast and they come up and punch me in the face and I say, oh, I accept what is. I'm this great meditator. So I surrender to what is. I'm being punched in the face. Oh, okay, now it's happening again. No, we don't say that. We say, can I deal with this situation? Can I remove myself? Do I need to fight back? Whatever, right? If you ultimately ended up in a situation where you could not do anything, if you end up thrown in jail for a crime you wouldn't commit and you're going to be spending the next 30 years there, then you do have two choices. Can I accept how things are right now in this moment? I'm stuck in a jail cell and there's no chance of escape, or can I not? And one will lead you to more peace and one won't. And I've used a brutal example there and I can hear myself challenging it already, right? So I'm going to challenge it out loud. It's very, can be very flippant and say, well, what a stupid example. If I get thrown in jail and I'm going to be there for the next 30 years, who could possibly accept that? Who could possibly sit there and go, I'll surrender to what is. I'm going to be here for 30 years. So what we do then is we say, can you accept the fact that you can't accept it? So if you ever find yourself in a situation in life where you can't accept something, then if you can say to yourself, can I accept the fact that I can't accept it? It gives yourself a slightly longer leash where your brain doesn't immediately reject against it, right? You've already talked about incurable cancer. Incredibly hard thing to accept for anybody. And somebody who's just diagnosed with that may find it extremely offensive if I would say to them, can you accept that? Can you surrender to what is? Can you accept that this is your reality right now? Maybe they absolutely can't in that moment, very understandably. and mindfulness isn't to patronize people. It's not to pretend that a solution is there that isn't. It's not to ask them to bury or to pretend that there's something, they're feeling something when they're not. So somebody in that situation, they may eventually come to accept it, and you can share your own experience if you want, but we're then in the territory of, okay, can I accept that I can't accept it in this moment? Because what's the alternative? What's the alternative? I've used a few brutal examples there, probably because, people want to hear the most brutal examples rather than just mini playful ones. But I would also say to people, Nigel, if you're trying to do this, and I'm trying to do this all the time, by the way, I'm an eternal student. I belong on nobody's pedestal. If you and just see what's true in your experience is my other tip, right? Don't believe anything I say on this show. See what's true in your own experience. See if the next time you get caught in the rain without an umbrella and without the right coat on, notice that if you're walking for long enough, notice that the moment you stop and say, bugger it, I'm going to get wet, don't care anymore. Notice if you feel a little bit of peace squeaking up through you. Notice if the next time you ask for the dessert in the restaurant and they say, sorry, we've run out, if you say, okay, I'll pick something else. Notice as soon as you accept that, if a tiny bit more peace comes. And if it does, what are you onto there? What's different? What's different between you resisting the rain happening and blaming everybody else and blaming the crappy British weather and blaming your wife who moved your umbrella or blaming everybody else? What's the difference between all of that and accepting what it is? Because these are powerful lessons. These are really deep truths. They're not easy. They're not easy, but we can practice them but in tiny ways and just see whether or not they're true for us. And that's all I'd invite people to do.
It doesn't take long either. This is not like it's an hour a day or 2 hours a day. It could be seconds, minutes. It's all it takes just to notice of the presence of it. And I know it's a journal I've been on in life, and I've had things like, for me, it's like I can't affect everything in it. Why am I worrying about the past if it doesn't exist anymore? Why am I worrying about tomorrow if it's not even here? All I've got is this actual moment. But can I learn from something in the past that I don't have to bring the anger or the sadness of that moment into my own moment now? I just accept for what it was. I can learn from it, I can see it, but right now I'm just here because I can't change 5 seconds ago. I can't ask you the same question I did 10 seconds ago. I certainly can't ask you a question that's about to happen. All we've got is now. I think all the beautiful presence, the Buddhist movement in general is wonderful. But it comes into something I want to talk about. We talk about presence, we talk about being in the moment. Are there particular traits, or are there that leaders, that you notice, and how leaders avoid being in the present, and what's the cost of them avoiding it? There's certain things leaders do just prevents wanting to be in the moment.
I think the entire world is pushing us out of the present moment. I mean, whether it's business or whether it's anything else. I mean, that the world isn't designed to make you present, Nigel, sadly. And if even if we go back 30 plus years to remembering 4 TV channels and no internet and no smartphone and no 24-hour culture, it's like we had more opportunities naturally then to be present, right? Because if I want to ring Nigel, I haven't got a he hasn't got a mobile, he hasn't got so what do? I ring his house. He's not in. Maybe I could leave a message. Maybe I couldn't. I ring his office. He's not there. Okay. Maybe he's there next time I come back. There's no immediacy. Maybe I could fax you. But the impact the digital revolution has had on how wired we are, on how under so much stimulation we are, is phenomenal. And our little tiny Stone Age brain certainly hasn't changed in the last 30 years to keep up with that. So there's that angle. I think if you look at business, most businesses I see are very kind of future looking, and every quarter has to be better and everything has to be faster and quicker and leaner, and we've got to make more money. So, some organizations hate sort of, hate loss so much they will describe things as negative growth. Like that's how crazy our language is. We can't say, we've got to say negative growth instead of, it's mad, isn't it? So in a world that's conditioned by everything having to be bigger, better, stronger, faster, and tomorrow is going to be better, and next quarter is going to be better, and we will be happy when we just get here. We all play into this, and it's this concept of future. You just touched on it, right? You said the present moment's the only thing there is. And let's just go a tiny bit deeper into that, because if somebody hears that and goes, what does it really mean to me? Well, you can think about the past, but when can you think about the past? In the present moment, in this moment. And I can plan for tomorrow, next week, next year, but I can only do that in this moment. And when tomorrow comes, it's the present moment again. And I can't go to the future, right? I can't go and get Saturday night's lottery numbers. And one way I used to describe this, I think I said this when you were on my podcast. One way I used to describe this when I was presenting at IBM, I used to say, I've got this great bar in London, guys. Beautiful bar. I've got the greatest champagnes, the most beautiful whiskies, whatever you drink, I've got it. Come see me. And there's a sign above the bar and it says free drinks tomorrow. And I give away precisely no drinks. Because you come in, Nigel, and you say, Steve, bottle of Dom Perignon 96 is my favorite vintage. I say, Nigel, you've got impeccable taste, but it's free drinks tomorrow. And you say, oh, bugger, yeah. So you come back, well, you call tomorrow, but it's now called today, because, take away the human mind, you take away time. With it, humans, the only species that operate in here. If I go and ask my dog what day of the week it is, she looks at me blankly. Is it Monday? Is it meaningless to animals, right? Is it 4:47? Whatever. So you come back the next day and I say, no, Nigel, it's tomorrow. And then you come back the next day and I say, no, Nigel, it's tomorrow. So people can then understand, okay, yes, we've got this concept. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with planning. There's nothing wrong with remembering. But I think if you live your entire life one of these, probably the best case scenario is your life will speed past very quickly, and you will be that person in your people's home who turns to the nurse and says, they say, "What did you do, Nigel?" And you say, "No idea. I blinked and I missed it. No idea. Absolutely flew by." That's probably your best case. Your worst case scenario. Well, I say worst case scenario. I've probably got them around the wrong way. Probably your best case scenario is you suffer enough to a point where you realize there's got to be more than this. So I take that back. The best case isn't that your life zooms past. That's probably the worst case. The best case is that it wakes you up, that the suffering in your life makes you realize these deep truths and you start to make changes and do something about it, which is exactly what happened to you and I.
100%. And, which, and this thing that really is worrying me about our business leaders in effect in the role we and a collective around the world would only be happy when we reach a certain point. Now, I think, why the fuck can't we just be happy right now? If things aren't good, it doesn't mean I have to be sad or unhappy or angry about it. I can be happy about it, but actually just things aren't very good. And why not take this thing right? Our numbers aren't great. We've missed a quarter, missed another quarter. Our margins aren't doing very well. We're losing our customer base. We're using our loyalty to our customers is eroding. Our shareholder value is dropping. What I'll do, I'll go and be a shit to everybody. I'll do. I'll go put pressure on everybody. In the kind of the hierarchy, ask what I'll go and do, because that will increase performance. That's fine to fix the issue, but I'm a real shit. Come, wake up, please. It just doesn't make any sense. And I was like that. And it was journey of trying to use compassion as a word to say, this is a better way here. I can help you quantify it, can show you how compassion in your operating model, in your supply chain, in your customer, you can put compassion everywhere, can really, really make a massive difference. So how has your understanding of compassion evolved since you became a mindfulness coach and teacher and leader in it? And where do you see it showing up and where's it missing in the boardroom today?
So interestingly, I rejected the compassion element of the very first mindfulness course I did, which was an Oxford University course. They bring it into their curriculum after about 6 weeks, I think. So they want you to have practiced other things. They want you to have increased your self-awareness. They want you to have practiced lots of different ways of quieting the mind and becoming more aware of your thoughts and your emotions and your strong impulses, all this kind of stuff. And then we start to add on something a little bit deeper called self-compassion. Like, I remember when we got to that module thinking, don't really need this. I'm an all right kind of guy, Nigel. I don't go around kicking cats and hurting people. I'm all right. You know, could I be better? Yeah, but everybody could. But I'm all right. I'm a decent bloke. I don't really go around hurting people. And that's what I thought it was really, is, you know, are you a dick or are you an all right bloke? I thought was basically the question that week. And so I absolutely missed depth. I missed the depth of it totally, right? It went completely beyond me. So I rejected it, but and I understand why people do reject it and why they treat it as something that they think is not for them. But when I teach it now, the first thing I say is how incredibly powerful it is, right? And one of the examples I use is of a guy who was in Afghanistan. He's a US veteran and he served in Afghanistan. He saw a lot of his friends killed. And he was in the Pentagon and he saw a lot of his friends killed. There was a Pentagon when 9/11 happened. And so he had huge PTSD, huge trauma, uppercase T trauma, people being blown up and killed around him. And he really struggled. He was extremely angry after that. He was extremely, anger was his primordial emotion. And if you look, here's another deep statement, but it's true for me. Underneath anger is always fear. So he was actually very fearful underneath it, but it was manifesting as anger in the outside world. So he was very angry. He was very upset. He couldn't sleep. And the one thing that helped this guy, right? And the reason I pick him is because when I'm teaching macho guys, they don't want to hear metta, loving kindness, self-compassion. They want to hear words like inner strength. They want to hear tougher guy things and that, right? So let's just change the label for them. And I say, so inner strength, to build our inner strength, let's look at this guy who survived the Pentagon attacks, survived 9/11, went to Afghanistan, physically big guy as well, big sort of Marine kind of guy. The one thing that helped him was when he started being compassionate to himself. And why is that? It's because the hurdle you get stuck on, which is the hurdle I was stuck on, if you reject compassion, self-compassion out of hand, what it means is you will never accept yourself when things aren't how you want them to be. If you're experiencing, let's make it a really simple example. If you're experiencing a difficult emotion, something like fear or anger, like he had there, without self-compassion, you say, I shouldn't be angry. Why am I angry? Oh, Jesus Christ, I've been angry for years now. Why does everything piss me off? Well, it's everybody outside. The politicians can't run the country. Every other driver's an asshole. You know, you go around blaming everybody and everything else. It's very easy to do. We've all done it, right? But a more compassionate thing would say, do you know what? I'm really angry right now. And I guess everybody gets angry from time to time. And what would it mean? What would it look like if I could accept that it's my turn to be angry today? Kind of surrender to that, be the space for that, hold that, be with that, give myself a break for a second. What would that feel like? If I just breathed with it and noticed how it felt in the body, if I could just feel the contraction in my stomach, if I could just feel my increased heart rate, if I could just feel my fists clench, if I could notice the strong impulse to shout at somebody or say something I'll probably later regret. If I could be the space for these things, if I could observe these, witness these things rather than be them and act on them without any filter, what would that look like? And so that was a radical understanding for me, is self-compassion isn't about being all woo-woo and this fake kind of Pollyanna kind of everything's great and I'm great and I love myself and affirmations, as great as all those things are. This, at the most basic level, is about saying, do you know what, you are going to suffer as a human being. And if you can accept that and give yourself half a break every now and then when you do that, watch what happens, because it will shift more quickly. That fear, that anger, that intense emotion will shift through you and leave you more quickly. You'll feel centered again at a certain point, and it will just feel nicer for you and everybody else. And you won't have to just keep this lid on this very powerful thing because you keep rejecting it and you don't think you should feel like it and you don't think it's fair and the world's not fair. Okay, we can drop all that, give ourselves some kindness. You can literally put your hand on your heart if you want it and just say, okay, what would it feel like to breathe with this for a second? What would it feel like if I could accept it? We're back to acceptance, right? So the cynical man listening to this says, I can't accept it. Can't accept it. I can wish everybody else well, Nigel. I can wish my pet dog well. I can wish my wife well. I can wish my kids well. Yeah, that feels okay. Strangers, don't know about that one. People at work, possibly. Don't ask me to feel to wish myself well. That if I wanted to offer myself kind words, may I be as happy and as healthy as it's possible for me to be. Feels a bit icky, feels a bit weird, don't like it. A wall goes up. So I say to that person, let it hit the wall then. Just wish it to the wall. Can you say to yourself, may I be as happy and as healthy as it's possible for me to be? Just that. Can I wish that? If a wall comes up, let it hit the wall. And guess what? Every time it hits that wall, it makes it crumble just a tiny bit. And if my experience is if you just stick with it, it's not about forcing it or trying to barrel that wall down, let it hit the wall gently. You keep hitting that wall gently, at a certain point it will start to crumble. And at a certain point you may go, do you know what? Maybe I am worthy of wishing myself the happiest and healthiest life I could have. Because underneath everything, we all just want that. We're all human beings that want that.
Come on, who wants to be happy and peaceful and have joy in their life? Come on. And this is why I have self-compassion in my book, The 10 Traits, the halfway point. And there are so many very crucial to this one point. The reason why it's halfway. The first 4 traits are all the inner, the remaining 4 traits after the 5 traits are all about the outer, or certainly others. Because so many people who are kind, who can give compassion, and they can receive it. They can be kind and nice, and the doors feel lovely stuff and be very welcoming. But they're burning inside, they're dying inside, and actually, their life's in personal turmoil. Yet they've got this exterior kind of ability to say, "I'm going to give you compassion, and I'll receive it," but I haven't got it myself. It's missing from the inner me. And actually, the truth is, unless you have self-compassion, there's no way you can be genuinely and authentically compassionate to anyone else. It's just a false positive. You're lying to yourself if you think that you can give compassion, receive compassion without having compassion yourself. It's possible. It's completely in the world. I talk to a lot of people. It is the most critical trait of how to be a compassionate leader. And it's the one we all just ignore. We just ignore it. Because of all the things that we just been talking about, we're talking about this different hat that we wear. We turn up to work. I've got my boss hat on. I've got my leadership hat on. I've got all these different hats on. Therefore, I have to do something for other people. Therefore, I will just ignore my own requirements of life. But actually, if I pay attention to my own requirements of life, that's what I do. I get a great, lovely, peaceful, happy, loving life. I mean, it's incredible, but it doesn't happen immediately. It's the one thing I think everyone should spend half an hour a day, just the first one, and then it'll become natural to you. I just continue doing it. But it's so important. And it brings me on to probably the question, probably my last question of the day is, if you had 10 minutes, you kind of alluded to earlier to Nigel, let's go back to 20 years ago, Nigel. But if you had 10 minutes with a CEO, a very hard-nosed CEO today, who's never practiced mindfulness or stress reduction, all the great things that you do, never been aware of it before, he thinks his wife goes out and does all the kind of yoga, look at it, that's personal stuff. It's not in my business stuff. What would you do with them, and what outcome would you hope for?
I would probably ask them, if I had 10 minutes, I certainly wouldn't use terms mindfulness. I certainly wouldn't use terms like self-compassion. I would want to have a very friendly chat, and I'd ask them, and we can all do this as a group, if anybody, right, people watching this. I would say to him, bring to mind any moment in your life where you felt peaceful. So maybe you were still, maybe lying on the beach. Don't want to put too many ideas in your head, but maybe you're lying on the beach somewhere. So you felt deeply peaceful, or you noticed joy. You noticed incredible joy and beauty in something. So you felt this beautiful stillness, and maybe you were still, maybe you were doing something very active. Maybe you were playing around a golf or tennis or whatever. And I would say, bring that moment to mind. It could be 5 years ago, 5 days ago, or when you were 6, doesn't matter, right? Any moment in your life, but it's a memorable moment because you've got it in your head. And I'd say to them, zoom all the way in on that. Zoom all the way in. So right, really, really, really zoom in. Keep zooming, keep zooming. up to a point where you notice the very moment where you felt that peace arrive and you kind of went, ah, or you noticed that sun setting and you just went, wow. Or you stroked your dog and your eyes met and you just felt the beautiful fur. Or you looked into a baby's eyes and you felt the weight of the world lift for 2 seconds. If we zoom into that, or you're lying on your beach, or whatever your situation is, and I'd say to him, when that happened, when you felt that beautiful peace, stillness, how much thinking were you doing? And he would say, probably none. Now, if he didn't say none, we could go into it. But if he says none, right, which is the answer, then we want to come. Now, I'd say to him, that's a moment of mindfulness. To call it what you want, call it some of the most beautiful moments in your day, but that's a moment of mindfulness and stillness. And that's when you feel peace. That's when you feel joy. Guess what? That's when creation and true innovation comes through. This is when you build your resilience. This is when the weight of the world lifts. This is incredible things, right? So I'd say to him, you're practicing this stuff already. You're practicing in it, when you first get up and you stand out in the morning and you watch the sunrise, or you go and lie on a beach for 2 weeks in summer and you feel incredibly peaceful there. I'd say you're practicing this stuff already, and it's probably one of the most normal things you do. It's probably building your resilience already, and you know what it is. So what I'm teaching is that there's nothing that you do in these moments that we can't bring into the rest of your life. You don't need to fly to Spain and go and lie on a beach for 2 weeks. It's harder to, but you can recreate that moment when you're sitting on a tube in central London, when you're stopped at a red traffic light, when you're taking your shower in the morning, when you're drinking your coffee, when you're drinking your wine, whatever you're having. We can reproduce those moments. So this isn't some airy-fairy abstract concept. This mindfulness thing isn't some weird thing that they do in weird places in the world or hippies do here. This is something that you're doing already that really nourishes you already. And if you need or want more of that, I can show you how. And I can show you in ways that are going to fit your life now, because guess what? A lot of it's not going to be about doing different things. It's going to be about doing things differently. So I can help you radically change your life. I can help you the reason people's blood pressure reduces when they work, the reason they sleep better is because we start to drop what I call mindfulness confetti throughout their day. And people come back refreshed from holidays, don't they? Because holidays are very mindful. You go there and you probably don't check your phone so much, and you really taste the drink, this beautiful orange juice or wine or whatever you've ordered there, and then the lovely plate of fish turns up and you drink that, and you're seeing maybe architecture that you hadn't seen certainly for a while or maybe ever, and that takes your breath away, and then the sun sets behind the sea, and God, that's gorgeous. So you're having just loads of mindful moments. A holiday's just a ton of mindful moments together, right? And it boosts us. Everybody loves, I've got to go on holiday. It's the only time I feel less stress. It's the only time I need that, because then I come back to work and the stress starts. Okay, so you're practicing almost a little intense version of mindfulness there, and then you're abandoning it for the other 50 weeks of the year, whatever you've got, right? So I would spend like 10 minutes trying to make that person see that this is the most normal thing he's ever seen in his life. He's practicing it already. These are some of the greatest moments of his life. And if he wants more of them, if he thinks that he can benefit from more of them, I can show him how. And I can show him how in a way that doesn't hurt. I can show him how in a way that's not going to take hours of his time every day. And I'm going to show him ways that's going to be the most secular, mainstream, easy way to fit into your day you've ever had. And the last thing I'd say to him is, if you're going to try this with me, I'll ask you a few questions. 1, how are you going to find the time to do a bit of practice with me? 2, who else but you is going to benefit from this? 3, what are you going to say to yourself if after 2-3 weeks your motivation dips? 4, how are we going to measure this? What does it look like? What does a great experience look like? And the 5th one is, give me at least 6 to 8 weeks of your time, because Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And if they argue with that, I'd use the analogy of fitness, where I said, let's say you're extremely overweight and unfit, and your doctor said to you, fitness is great, I need you to do some fitness. And you say, okay, well, I'll walk around the block, right? I'm not very mobile, but I'll walk around the block. So you get out and you walk around the block, and the weather's hot, and your joints are, and it's painful, and you don't like it, and you're out of breath, and you come back after your lunchtime walk, and you get on the scales, and you haven't lost a single pound. And what do you say to yourself? What do you surmise from that experience, Nigel? Well, I hated exercise. It made my joints ache. I got all hot and bothered, and now I need a shower, and I haven't lost a bloody pound of weight. Absolute waste of time. So you dismiss exercise out of hand, load of crap, doesn't do anything, doesn't work for me. Yes, I tried it, and it didn't work. If other people get something from it, fine. So we have to have this component as well. And the biggest mistake businesses make is thinking we can do this in a 2-hour workshop, a 1-hour keynote. We can't, right? Give me your people for 6 weeks, not for mass. I only want them for 9 hours spread across 6 weeks, all right? Or 12 hours spread across 8, whichever way you want to do it. I don't ask them for loads of time compressed, 1 session a week, and with a little bit of practice in between. But we're going to do it. Let's do it properly or not at all. I don't know if I would fit that all in 10 minutes
No,
or
you
if we were
did.
overran, but that's
It was
pretty
fantastic. Actually, I've got 2 final things I want to cover with you. One of which, covered off the CEO, whether he or her will buy into it and the outcomes they get. But what's the one message you'd love every listener to take away from this conversation, especially to those who think they're too busy for it? They're too busy for mindfulness. They haven't got those 9 hours over 9 weeks. What's the one message you want to give them?
I've got a patronizing and a non-patronizing answer. The patronizing answer is make time for your mental health or you'll have to make time for your illness. And that's brutal, but true, right? And you alluded to that earlier. You said that you think, but I'd probably go, and that's for people. The reason I'm giving these one brutal answer and one kinder answer is because some people need a kick up the backside, some people need a cuddle, right? So pick whichever one you want from these two. The other answer to that is, if you genuinely don't have time, I'd ask you to look a bit more deeply about how much time you genuinely have. I mean, if I say to somebody, I don't have 10 minutes a day for the next, 5 days a week for the next 6 weeks, that's not the truth. What it means is that I'm not prepared to prioritize it, because I could take that 10 minutes of my sleep. I could go to bed 10 minutes later, get up 10 minutes earlier, not scroll my phone so much, not look at the TV so much, whatever, right? But if somebody genuinely says to me, and some senior leaders I've worked with genuinely are ridiculously busy, and I've seen their calendars and they're constantly traveling and everything else, I would say to them, for you and I, it's going to be about, we're back to doing different things, but doing things differently. There's nothing you do in a form of meditation that you can't do in the rest of your life. You can quiet your mind when you're in the shower, if you know how. You can quiet your mind when you're brushing your teeth, putting your bins out, walking up and down a flight of stairs. So we will find those ways, Nigel, that we can piggyback this. I just worked with the general manager at a beautiful 5-star hotel in London called the Broadwick Soho. Incredible guy. The most incredibly stressful job. It's obviously a 24-hour operation. And this guy, Joshua, and I work together. And he is, it's a very high pressure job, goes without saying. And we had to find ways of dropping this into his day, right? So I would say to him, you're in it's easy in one way because he was in a 5-star environment, right? So the food's amazing, the drink's amazing, even the smell's amazing. The place smells phenomenal. I'm not normally somebody who notices smell, but I noticed that. So I said to him, the kind of things, Josh, that are going to help you are going to be, we've got to snap you out of this incessant stream of thought and quiet the mind every now and then, right? Just like when you're on holiday, you notice something beautiful. Steps you out of incessant thinking, quiets the mind, back to incessant thought. So let's bring it to a 5-star hotel. You're the general manager of a hotel. You're running this place. You're responsible for everything. Huge responsibility. How do you quiet your mind throughout the day? Because you haven't even got 10 minutes to go and sit somewhere quiet and do a practice, right? So the ways he would do it, I'd invite him, pick a flight of stairs. When you walk through the lobby there's a beautiful staircase. When you're going up that staircase, I want that to be your trigger to say how present am I now? Feel your hand on the handrail for just for 2-3 steps. Feel your feet as they go up. As you walk downstairs, you could ask yourself, am I breathing? Sounds like a stupid question, doesn't it? Am I breathing? What a ridiculous question to ask yourself. It's not a ridiculous question if you don't let your clever mind answer it. The clever mind will say, of course I'm breathing. What's next? If you go beyond that, if I said to you now, how do you know in this moment you're breathing? Feel it. Feel the breath coming and going. You've got to sense the breath. You've got to catch it right at the tip of the nostrils. Everybody can do it with me right now. How do you know you're breathing right now? I feel cool air as I breathe in. If I'm really alert, I feel it going past the throat, the chest. I feel my belly expand as I breathe in. As I breathe out, the belly deflates. Breath comes back out, it's slightly warmer. Now, before I can say, I'm breathing, my mind has to stop because I have to place all my attention on the sensation of breathing. If my mind stops, we're back to beautiful moments. We're back to lying on the beach. We're back to skiing down the mountain. We're back to whatever people's examples were. where they quiet their mind. So if Josh is in his 5-star hotel and he asks himself that question, he's got 2 seconds, he's got 15 seconds before he's got to rush to another important meeting. Am I breathing? Okay. Couple of conscious breaths, and in he goes. And if you drop enough confetti throughout your day, Nigel, the cumulative effect will happen. Anybody who's right, we've all seen that documentary. What's it called? Super Size Me, where the guy eats McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He eats it. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth a watch, right? But I'll give you the spoiler now. He eats McDonald's every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He goes and sees his doctor after day 1. Doctor says, no problem, you're fine. After 30 days, his doctor's jumping up and down and says, have you seen your liver results? Have you seen your blood results? Please stop. Right. So 1 McDonald's is 1 conscious breath. Won't do anything. Won't even show in your results. Lots of conscious breaths, lots of McDonald's is going to show up in your blood work, so to speak. So we're back to give me your time for 6 to 8 weeks, right? This is a cumulative effect. Please don't try it for a tiny amount of time and give up on it. You'll do yourself a massive disservice, is my last point.
Thank you. I've loved this because it's, you and I talk the same things together and we're a bit aligned. But we both know there's a world out there that just needs a bit of self-awareness, a bit of coaching, a bit of guidance, and the world will dramatically change, as you said. So, Steve, you're reminding us that mindfulness isn't about escaping the chaos. It's actually about facing with clarity and compassion. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real leadership's all about. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute. And thank you so much for the great work you're doing. And obviously, people can go to your website, stevewaremindfulness.com, to get all the great information, resources. Just talk to Steve. It's my advice to everyone who's listening to this. It doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of time that you can reallocate your TikTok time to this time, and the difference to your life will be incredible. So, Steve, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Take care.